awake.
Right, let's pretend to be awake.
Okay.
Okay, so, real quick, right off the bat, I think I'm too loud, so I'm going to go ahead and turn myself down. But if somebody in the chat would let us know where we're at sound-wise, that would be rad. And then we'll kick the show off.
And then we'll do it.
Then
we'll kick it off.
Then we'll do it.
Oh, look at you on Hamilton.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Sweet. Oh, yeah, I didn't change my background because I was busy. So if you see there's like dice dancing around now, and that says our URL, which is soup.fyi/Twitter to get to our Twitter stream.
Yeah.
Richard's sound doesn't like the mic.
Oh no!
Sound doesn't sound like
the
mic. Oh, is your Skype picking up your mic, or is it picking up your computer?
I'll fight you, Skype. We're gonna have an arm wrestle. Loading now.
Loading now.
Oh, and there we go, friend.
Holy smoke screens. That sounds so much better. All right.
Sorry, I'm very used to my Zoom calls with all my kids, and it auto-loads everything. And Skype is like, I don't remember you. Have we met? Sorry about that. I hope I'm not too loud now.
No, you're great. I also have a mixer control here, so I was able to do a little bit of that. But here, wait 1 second. Okay, hold. All right, and welcome to the show.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good.
Also, so I also built that stinger, the scene transition. I built that yesterday. I turned Richard up a little. Let me know, Aubrey. And so I kind of wanted to play it again.
It's so good. It's so good. I love it.
All right. Thanks for the slow start, everyone. We're trying some new things out. We're trying to make our stream better, more entertaining to watch and listen to. So we've done a handful of things. So I'm just I'm a little scattered. I was up until really late last night working on some of this stuff, and then I got up early this morning and worked on it some more. And after all of that, I realized that we were testing stuff this morning, and the program that we were going to try just didn't work.
Yeah.
So we went back to the old program, and here we are, and it's great. It's fun. And so welcome to Owlbear Soup, everybody.
Yes. I'm so excited for some soup this morning. We've been hanging out for Hold on. Go back. Yeah. Where did you get that? Is this brand new? Did this just arrive? Did you make it just now?
Yeah, out of nowhere, I popped it out. So on my stream, my DJ stream for Dread Pirate Rabbits, I have some merch. And the merch I have set up, it's that's one of the items. And I believe there are 2 of them currently in existence.
Oh, wow.
One of them is right here. The other one happens to be in the hands of one Susie Weber.
Ooh. I like it. I like that a lot.
All right. Yeah, so anyway, so this week the plan was to talk about DM prep, but I think we have a few other things to touch on before we even get there. Yeah. So go ahead and kick us off, Rich. What you got going on?
Gosh, what have I been up to? Oh wow, we've been doing D&D camp. This is week 4. This is the halfway point of my summer, and so this week has been 3 full weeks of teaching D&D to kids and adults, and I think this was also an advanced week. So it was just like running endlessly, like, oh my gosh, do this, let's make this happen, let's do this adventure, let's have fun. It was very, very cool.
Nice.
Have I been doing other stuff besides that? Besides the wonders? Oh, I should talk a whole lot more about that, because later today I have to press 2 buttons, and they're going to happen right after this. But after this, I have decided to launch the after-school program for this, because teaching D&D to kids has been a ton of fun, and I'm going to see if I can just do it all year long.
Oh yeah, that's amazing.
Run like a Yeah, it should be fun. Run a 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern time and another one Pacific time, so that kids all across the country can jump in and play. Run some like faction style missions, like the good old Pathfinder days, but also have some like short story arcs that people can join in on and play some D&D.
Awesome.
So I'm excited. It's been a whole lot of fun. I'll talk way more about this later on because kid stuff is so much fun, and it's going to get into our DM prep conversation, I think.
Okay,
but,
cool. Let's see.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see here. I did that thing where I've been scrambling all morning, and my first chance to kind of take a breath and kind of like is right now when I was supposed to be doing the show with you guys. So I'm a little distracted. We this week played some D&D. It was a lot of fun. We're delving deeper into the Dungeon of Mad Mage. They reached what I think is kind of the most challenging and weirdest levels, and I'll probably talk a little bit about this when we dig into the prep thing too. Is that this area is like it's run they've already met the Archdruid of the area, and this is her grove, and her grove is underground. But if you look out, you see that it's spoilers. You see that the sky, there's like a sky, and oh man, it's so cool. It's really a cool level, but it's also a challenging level to DM. And that'll definitely be something we'll talk about a little bit more whenever we get into our other talk. But other than that, DJing stuff, and been playing a lot of Destiny and
That's true. That's true. This has been a big Destiny week, that's for sure, and I haven't been able to get in enough. That's okay. There's a lot to do. Can I tell you about the silliest thing that I have started doing?
Yes, absolutely.
Get ready.
I'm so ready.
Because I joined a fantasy football mega game.
Oh, that's right. You were telling me about that.
So I've never done a mega game before, and I've leapt into this, and I am now part of the Alexandria Sirens, and our team has only been around for 2 years. Like, we're an expansion team. Okay. And basically it's these sages. They're simplifying the game a whole lot because it's a mostly like role-playing political experience, right? So we have like the team owner, that is the liege, is running around like making all these parliamentary deals, trying to get our team in the best position. We have the hand, who is out there like making deals and trading for the best players, and then I am like the head coach of the team, so I have to actually like do roster lineups and deal with everyone's like zodiac signs and how those are going to work out each like day to day, match to match. And there's a note on the site that says, so we kind of hope that you get in and play about half an hour every other day, for the 3 weeks this is happening. Mm-hmm. I was on like 4 Zoom calls yesterday, I think, prepping and planning this game. Because yesterday was the big launch. It was just all day, just constantly checking Discord, checking all these chats to try and see our scores. It's so ridiculous. We lost our exhibition match, and I freaked out. I was like, no, you all tell me the rules. I don't understand what's going on. And I guess mega games, because it's all about this like, almost emergent gameplay. Like the lieges are like, well, what if we set up a proposal in Parliament that they're like the players unionize or something like that? Like, that's not in the game. That's not a rule that's hard and fast. But they start deciding like, okay, well, if you do that, we could put these, constraints, and like it's all building together. And then we also have this like Quidditch style game that's really set and straightforward. And it's really funny to kind of see people grab onto different pieces of it and role play and optimize. I'm definitely in the optimizing little team down here. But other folks are like the improvisers in every D&D game you've ever played that are like, okay, I know that all I can do is attack on my turn, but what if I like leap on their heads and like grab their head with my legs and spin them over and then back, elbow them in the back and then sword strike them? Can I get like triple advantage on that? Like, that feels like most of this game.
Right. Cool.
It's unbelievable.
It sounds fun. I forget if I talked about the wrestling RPG that I had partook in. If I talked about that on when we were talking about Destiny, or if I talked about it on this show.
I can't remember.
But yeah, in quick summary, it was a weird like fantasy wrestling RPG where you created your own persona, and we played it over email, and so much of it was just like everything that didn't happen within the ring was a huge part of like the story and all that jazz. So it was really cool. It was really fun, kind of like thinking about role playing in a different context than your typical fantasy and sci-fi and those types of things.
Yeah, it's really fun because I expected, a lot of people came in and they had these Harry Potter vibes going, like very Quidditch style, right? But it has so quickly become its own thing in a day and a half.
Nice.
It's incredible to see people's creativity come out in those things, like you're saying, like outside of the rules.
Right.
Like, I'm sure the wrestling had very specific wrestling rules, but we never write rules for role playing or for emergent gameplay. That's
yeah, it was the matches were solely determined on the judge, right? So whenever we played, the way it worked was we would write out like what our finisher was, what it looked like. Part of it was whether we were a heel or a hero, and or if we kind of bounced in between. And then the other thing the locker room talk in the intros were about all we role played, and then the coordinator would take our move set and fit it all together and create the match. And also, like we had a lot of interplay between the other players, where especially if you were a heel, you could recruit other players to send in an email of what they do during the match, including like interference. And if you were a hero, you could do the same, but it kind of looked bad, right? If you recruited your friends to come stand outside the ring and protect you, right? So anyway, it was a ton of fun. I had a lot of fun, and I think it was in the AOL era of role playing, and there was just kind of a zeitgeist of the time, because we didn't have like the Skype stuff, right? We couldn't play across the virtual table from each other, so it was all text based. A lot of my very first introduction to D&D was in AOL chat rooms, and then this was a play by email type of game. And then I did a lot of play-by-post games on the internet too. And so a lot of times I'm kind of, and this is, as I'm saying this all out loud, it definitely reflects in the way I am a role player at the table, because it takes me a little while to get into the mode of things, and I start to think like I think more elaborately than there's time to talk about. And a lot of times, if like I've found in a virtual tabletop, like playing on Roll20 and stuff, my descriptions for characters and character stuff, it's like I come in like not nearly half as many times as other people do, but when I do, it's always like with a flourish.
Right. I understand. Yeah, because you had to plan it out. You had to think about it. It wasn't just like, oh, it's my turn. What do I do? It's like, okay, it's gonna be my turn. I got to be ready for something awesome.
Exactly.
It's a different thing.
It is. So
that is fun.
Yeah.
As you were talking, I started thinking, because in this game I'm playing, like we won our first match, and our team is only 2 years old.
Yeah.
Versus some of these Quidditch teams that have been around for like 150 years or something. It's basically a League of Legends thing. There's like lanes and stuff, whatever. But the quickness that I had with just going from, oh, we won the match, to I'm gonna open Photoshop, I'm gonna grab a picture from like Vuvuzelas everywhere, I'm gonna do a color overlay with our team away colors, and I'm gonna post that. Like it was ridiculous. Like I was just thinking about our kids who during camp hear about a villain and they're like, oh my gosh, this villain is so cool. I'm going to make them in Hero Forge, and I'm going to make, and immediately send pictures to everybody. Like the online medium is such a cool thing right now, because those tools are so accessible and so simple, and they add a whole lot to the game. It's wild.
Yeah. I've been thinking a fair amount about like trying to find some play by email or play by post games, just to kind of have that experience again, and to see and partially to see if it was me playing those games through rose colored goggles, right? Because it's like I look back on them and I'm like, man, those were some of my best RP days. That's like I got so into character, and there was just so much depth to my characters then, and now I just show up at a table with the stats, and then I make up the character as I go along, right? Which I mean, not completely true, but kind of true, right? Like, for me, I
Well-
do the background thing and I write a couple paragraphs about backstory, and then the character evolves. But back then, that's when I was writing the multiple pages character backsheets, because that was just part of the medium, was a lot of writing.
Yeah. I mean, that also makes sense. It also, I mean, as you have gained more experience, I mean, you can do more with less than you could have once upon a time. So I think that, we certainly end up in a certain place where we're writing less, because more of that can exist in our minds and we can bring it out. And even if in the moments I don't have something exactly, I can think about, like, well, what did I do 7 characters ago that's similar? Okay, bam, let's bring that in.
Yeah. There's definitely that aspect as well. Yeah, I do remember. So Jonathan mentions in the chat that he played Deadlands via email, and it took forever. And that was the thing, though. It's like a lot of those games, it's to play by posts and stuff, especially like anything that has any kind of levels. It's like I can reflect back and I can go, okay, well, I remember level 1 taking 6 to 9 months, because just even with a daily frequency, it was still like, a month was an hour at the table, right?
Yeah. I've only ever played Birthright by email, and basically it just became the domain kingdom simulator or whatever. We didn't do the character stuff was much less important. Like, if you went on an adventure as one of your domain actions, you basically just wrote in, like, I intend to go to this place, I'm hoping to find these things, and it would just kind of get like hand waved. Like, even when I was running them, it was just too much. Like, it was too much to track all of the national stuff going on, all the different domains and how they were, like, excuse me, if I have to sort this war out over here, I can't take you on a little adventure to go, like, clear out a thieves guild. We're just, that's an action. Just use a domain action. And so it meant that we had these, like, very specific. It was almost like playing diplomacy. Like, you have so long, and then you have to turn in your turns, and then the turns all happen. And it was so unlike D&D in that sense.
Well, I
guess I have never played it.
I was gonna say, no, that sounds pretty AD&D-ish to me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Do you remember you declared your actions and then rolled initiative?
Oh, I guess that's true. I do remember that. And then they would just happen.
And you did it every round, not just like initiative at the beginning of combat. But I think I remember that. Now I'm gonna have to look at my old books. But I think you rolled initiative every round, and you declared your intentions. You rolled initiative, and then everything plays out.
Yeah,
which narratively,
that's interesting.
I think it's a little bit better, right, from a narrative perspective, being able to narrate the combat based on that. But at the same time, it's like, oh man, like, having a high initiative only gives you an advantage in that you get to act first, which isn't necessarily an advantage when you have a wizard who says, I'm doing a fireball this round.
Yeah. Right. I can't remember what system it was. It might have been Shadowrun even, but like when you rolled initiative, it was the person who rolled the worst. They had to declare what they were doing first, and they had to stick with it. And so your benefit for rolling good initiative was you got all the information about what everybody else was doing before you took your turn. Yeah. And I thought that was a really cool idea. I mean, in 5th ed, I can't even imagine it working. Like, things are so fluid and always changing, but that one was so much more static. So it was very neat. Like, you wanted the wizard to roll poorly because then you got to know that they were casting that fireball, and you as the ranger would be like, well, now that I know and you've said it and you're doing it, I'll move that way.
Well, and interrupting spells, and it was something that was a lot more prevalent in 2nd edition, because your wizard would classically roll low on initiative, not roll very well, but meantime they were spending this round prepping a spell, right? And so it's like, oof.
Yeah, I don't know that I miss it, but
I don't know that I miss it.
I don't know.
I've gone back and played. Probably like 6 years ago, I played AD&D, and it was awful.
Yeah, did you play with weapon speeds? Because we certainly did.
Yeah, well, you have to play with weapon speeds, and then you have to play with the adjustments based on armor to what kind of weapon you're using.
Oh my gosh, that wizard is casting this kind of spell. It'll take about this long. I want to get in before that, so I need to use a light weapon with a low weapon speed. It was just, it was so absurd.
Let's talk about segments. All right, so enough.
Oh my gosh,
enough of the old. Let's talk a little bit about the new. There's a couple of things I want to kind of touch on a little bit before we get to the story. The discussion of the week. Kicking off, the Ennies. the Ennies have been announced.
Yeah.
So it looks like a bunch of the Dungeon Masters from the DMs Guild are getting representation. So Gnarl's Candy Compendium, Book of Season Solstices, Killer
Yes.
Kobolds from Outer Space, Uncaged 1, Volume 3, Jaunt to the
Okay.
Center of Faerun, Protege of the Trampling Forest, Stigma Untamed, The Only Way to Be Sure, and Where Can She Be? So, yeah, those titles have been nominated. And, yeah, go and vote.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know quite a few of those. Was that last set the Adventurers League adventures?
I don't know. I didn't write that down. I just grabbed a list
Gotcha.
of all the DMs Guild votes. And and I'm excited that the DMs Guild is getting representation on there. And it's always been kind of a fight to get any kind of organized play on there. And this is kind of as close we're going to get. The Ennies in themselves, it's like unlike we talked about Spiel des Jahres not too long ago. Unlike Spiel des Jahres, the Ennies is a popularity contest. It's just,
Yeah,
it is, right? So for me, like getting nominated or making it to that round, I think is the real win here, right? For game designers and stuff. I don't take any credence in who wins. It's kind of like the Hugo Awards for me, right? Like I used to care who won the Hugos, but I don't care anymore because of it turned political, which anytime you have a popularity contest, it does that. And if Ennies were bigger and more important, it would quickly turn into a party system.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do like, absolutely. Oh my gosh, some of the representation on there is awesome. I'm so happy that the Book of Solstices or Book of Seasons got in there. That's awesome. Uncaged 3, they've made 4 of those in that complete set, and all of them are amazing. That's such a good pile of monsters and adventures. Killer Kobolds is Oliver Clegg. It's great.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest book. One of the weirdest. He's made some weird books. But that one is pretty weird. I was very excited to see it up there because it's up for like best writing and best adventure. Like it's incredible.
Yeah. And that's what I take from the Ennies at this point is like, all right, like I know now I have a batch of Dungeons Mastered Guild stuff to check out, right? And it's things like that, things that are available via PDF that I think is even better for the Ennies. When it comes to board games and other categories in the Ennies, or anything that's like you need a physical anything for, because it's like those are the companies that had the money to supply it, right? Because it's I was hearing somebody say it cost them $400 or $500 just to ship stuff alone, and so that's quite the investment to get in to even be potentially nominated. And I think there's a problem with that.
I looked at it like I did apply with Empyrean Investigations, but when it came down to it, I was like, well, I know that it's a physical product, but I'm also selling it as an electronic book, and I'm not gonna send them physical books. And I don't know, obviously I didn't get nominated, so I don't know if that hurt me or not. But it seemed like even in the application form that I was looking at, it seemed like I was almost cheating. It was like, we prefer physical copies, we really, really do. But if you have to, here's the electronic submission, which for the DMs Guild is interesting because it's almost all electronic. I know Uncaged is a print copy. There's a couple of books that are print on demand, but I don't know if all of those are. Yeah. So success for ebooks.
Right. Cool. So I think that's really all I wanted to pop on about the Ennies. Problematic contest, I guess, but it is what it is. It gives a lot of smaller game designers a platform to push their products, and being an Ennie nominee means just as much as it being an Ennie winner to me. So I'll be checking out some of those things.
Cool.
All right. Well then, if there's nothing else, I suppose we should get into the discussion of the week. I think you're super prepped for this. Speaking of prep, you've had a whole 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks now of it.
This is just all I'm thinking about these days. It's fun. So we're talking about DM prep, and I actually had a good conversation about this to close out my week because I have a couple times in the evenings like an adults camp, and my early intent was that's for two groups of players, either adults who have been waiting forever to learn how to play, sure, but also parents or, people who are interested in learning how to DM so that they can play for other people. Like they want to learn the game because their kids or whoever are interested. And so I had in that adult group that I had, one parent who was going to be running for his two kids, I think, almost immediately. And they had some ideas, but like they played, I think, back in second ed or something like that. So they wanted to know what the game was like now and get current. And then there were two other people who were teachers who were going to start D&D clubs or had been asked to proctor them or have them in their classrooms and really wanted to figure out what the game was so that they could help out. And it was incredible. It was really fun because it meant as we're doing this adventure and leading them through and telling this story, it was also I need to pause and say, this is why I'm doing this. And here's some of the reasons, some of the things that I think about while I'm doing this. Even the last group, I showed them my notes for the week's adventures just so they could see exactly how little prep I did.
Nice.
Because I got to be honest, I'm not doing a whole lot for the camp. I'm following the advice of the lazy dungeon master for kind of the first time ever.
Lazy dungeon master. He that's not Enrique. That's
it's a Sly Flourish.
Sly Flourish. There we go. It's Mike Shea.
Yep.
Mike Shea wrote he wrote two books. He wrote The Lazy Dungeon Master and The Lazy Dungeon Master Part 2 or something. I can't remember what the second one is.
Someone was joking, the lazier dungeon master. I think it's Return of. Yeah.
And his big thing is prep doesn't have to take 6 hours, right? Prep doesn't have to take as long as the game itself.
Which for me, that was a big thing to say. I was defensive immediately. I have not read this book on purpose for a long time because I do feel that what who would dare say that.
So but okay, man, it's been so long since I've read the book. I remember he does the 3 secrets, which the 3 secrets are great. But that's more. I think that's even more in depth than we really even need to start with. Step 1, you have a game next week. I think there's 3 different ways to look at that. And we'll be using D&D as kind of our example, or at least I will be. Yeah. Different games have different preps, and you'll have to adjust appropriately for that. But so next week you have a game, and it's one of 3 things, at least in my head. It's a one-shot style game, so either organized play or an intro adventure or something like that. It's it's ongoing home game, or it's a pre-written adventure. Sorry, that's spaced.
Oh, there it is. Yeah. Okay.
and those seem like kind of like the three main types of games, and how you prepare for each of them is going to be a little bit different, right? So, I would say the things that kind of tie them all together are, and I think these are just kind of just general tips to keep in mind. When the game starts, here's things to keep in mind. Be prepared to improvise, right? That's whenever you come to table, players are going to break whatever you put out there for them. One of the things is be prepared to take the XP for preppers. Yeah. The other thing is be prepared to use what the other players bring to the table. Hudson just mentioned XP for preppers, but that's not totally wrong, right? If a player of mine comes to the table and they have this great way of expressing their character, or they tell me something about their backstory, or they have any kind of suggestion, or even this plays into I like to, whenever we sat around the table, I like to do a little summary of the previous session with my party. And we've kind of fallen away from that in my home game, but after prepping for this, I think I'm going to bring that back. But that gives you an idea of the things that the characters or the players of the characters remember and stood out. So then you can focus on that. Let's see, what else?
This is good. Yeah. This is good.
Have extra NPCs ready. Have extra locations ready, have extra encounters ready. Yeah. So I think that's like kind of like no matter what kind of game, those are some general tips to get ready and get prepared to start playing.
Yeah. I let's see what's another good one for me. I think just for a general game, right? Especially when things can go chaotic, having answers to chaotic situations is always good. So I tend to have, you know, the guard encounter, right? I know what monster I can just throw out if you need to fight a guard or some sort of, you know, humanoid figure who's going to be fighting. I always need that one.
Yeah.
And I always need a wacky wild monster just in case people decide to go that direction and find something interesting. Those are kind of some highlights that I like to do. Of course, those are terrible ideas for organized play if you're doing Pathfinder,
right.
but that's a different story.
Yeah.
And it's you know, totally different amount of prep and direction of prep even between those two kind of games. So,
well, let's kind of kick off with the home game, right? The home game is a little more loose, right?
Yes.
Because you can kind of maneuver with the players a little bit more easy because you're not on the published adventure path, you're not on the one-shot organized play path. You have the ability to open the sandbox even if you have a very linear story set. Like, you know, and your game is in X amount of units, however many units ahead of X game you prepare. What do you do? How do you start? And actually, when do you start, right?
Oh my gosh.
That's determining the units, right?
Right. Exactly how much is going on. I got to tell you that the two Sly Flourish takeaways that I took, the Lazy Dungeon Master ones, apply right here and kind of only right here, I think, here in our home games. Because, you know, like I was saying, I always say things like, I love drawing maps because it helps me see the combat in my head and stuff like that. And so the takeaways that I found were the things that jar up against that. Like, that's a great mentality, I think, for running organized play. But here, running, like, he said that the danger of too much prep is that it builds up too much stake in your material, which fair, it does. You know, if people go off the rails, I get defensive. And I'm like, but what about my story? I wrote this cool thing. Don't you all want to do that? And home games can go off the rails so easily. Yeah. But the like putting that all together, if I could put that book into like a single sentence, he stops and he says, like, doing too much prep builds a story before it should be built. Like, it's a home game if it's about telling a story collaboratively. Then if I prep too much, I've already written too much of the story. You know, now there are these rails. You know, my players don't have those moments to interact and help build the story together. I've got a villain. I've got a location, you know. But if I start putting in all the details, like, well, to get from A to B, you're going to take this specific caravan. You're going to, you know, they might not want to. I had a bunch of kids recently who started coming up with all sorts of different ways to do a transport bit because they all had different story connections that they wanted to add. And I realized I just had to stop and let go and just, you know, let them, we'll do this one. Yeah. Sure. Good work. So with that in mind, you know, in doing this lazier approach, I am trying to think about the things that I must prep for this adventure to work and how little that needs to be, I guess. So, as I'm starting way beforehand, I guess, you know, I'm still going to start a week in advance easily. Or, you know, if it's a longer campaign, I might have a whole month that I'm kind of thinking about what all my bits and pieces are. I'm not a night before sort of prepper, although I'll certainly do quite a bit that morning. What am I looking for? Locations, characters, objects, general plot, the things that I can throw in to make this story interesting, whatever my players are going to want to do.
I prep for home games and published adventures kind of similarly in that probably about I think about it all week, and then maybe 2 hours to an hour before session is when I do all of my prep.
Oh wow.
Yeah, all of it.
That's amazing.
But you know, but I have a lot of shortcuts in the way I prep too, right? Like I'm very good at the one sentence version of what I expect in the adventure today. Right?
Oh, nice.
Like, you know, like I realize where things left off. I realize where I remember things leaving off. And then I have the players communicate to me where they remember things. And then I'm able to take that 1 to 2 sentence idea and turn it into the session.
Yeah.
But along with that, I do have to do some prep, right? I have to have, if it's home game, completely homebrew, then I have like 4 or 5 encounters. And then if I don't use all those encounters, some of those encounters will just be ready to go again. I do a lot of skinning. So like if I have an encounter prepped and they go a totally different direction, I'm ready to go, right? And it's just, those guards that you were going to face, well, now they're a group of hobgoblins who are, hobgoblin bandits. Great. Done.
Yeah.
Ready. We're good to go.
Same stats. Everything else is fine.
Exactly.
Like you have to do no work except do a short descriptive difference. And then one thing I've had to do is like also remember that even though it says longsword, I made those dwarves, so they have axes, and I keep saying the wrong word. Like that's the only danger of reskinning.
Yeah, there is that. And so, and then as far as and I messaged Aubrey to see if she could bring it to me, but I don't draw maps often. I rarely draw maps.
Oh, yeah?
I have, and I'll put a link to this in both the YouTube notes and the post whenever I post on the site. And I can't remember the name, but it's this book of maps. And you get 2 of them and you kind of like unfold it and they link together and it's all laminated and they just have a bunch of maps, right? And then also from Arknight, I have that big stack of their laminated maps. And if I can't find a map in any of those like collections, then I have like dungeon tiles, right? And I just kind of lay out a set of dungeon tiles. I'm like, all right, well, this is where they're fighting, right? The only time that's a little bit different is if I am doing something in a dungeon where I want the environment to be a puzzle, or I want the environment to be a part of the combat or that type of stuff, right? And, thank you, Aubrey. Here, I wanted to show this off. All right, so this is what I'm talking about. This thing right here.
Very nice.
So these maps are amazing. So, and then they come in 2 books, right? And then the books open up flat, and they have all this stuff on there.
Oh, very nice.
So,
those are good and wide. That's a good size.
Yeah, so and then
like
if you
that.
have 2 of them, and they have the same maps. If you have 2 of them, then you can kind of line the maps up together. So it's like I have all these map resources, and so I don't draw maps unless, like I said, unless it's a specific puzzle or a specific setting that I need. Like these aren't so great if they're doing a mansion, like they're in a mansion doing a dungeon crawl there, but they're great for like little one-off dungeon combats, that type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there's no reason, you're in a forest and you fight some things. You don't need a new map for that. That's
right, exactly.
That can be the same one. It's totally fine. I often do that. I have a book that's very similar that was on Kickstarter a couple years ago. It's a very tall book and I love it. It's got great things, and I would have to crawl through the space station to get it, so I can't do that. But maybe I'll see that next time. And also the Pathfinder, Paizo puts out flip mats, and those showed up often in Pathfinder organized play games, so I have quite a few of those.
Yeah, I've unmasked a collection of the Starfinder ones since I did a fair amount of Starfinder organized play. But yeah, I'm a big fan of like anything that kind of saves a little bit of prep time, like those pre-made maps, and then that's kind of the same thing with minis too, right? This is the thing. Like if I'm DMing at a table, 9 times out of 10, the monsters are going to be represented by Star Wars minis.
Yeah.
Right. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to be facing stormtroopers. I don't care if they're goblins, they're the town guard, or a roving band of hobgoblins. Right. Like it's going to be stormtroopers. Right? And that's just a simplicity thing, right? It's like all my players are using fantasy minis, so I just have like a bunch of stormtroopers, a bunch of Jawas, a bunch of just bunch of Star Wars minis, and then I use those a lot at the table to differentiate between the enemies and the heroes. Unless it's a very specific like cinematic fight that I want to be special, then I'll pull the right minis because I got a lot of minis.
Yeah. Well, that is cool. I use the Pathfinder pawns, like the cardboard standees, because again, it gives that differentiation. You can look at the table and tell what's a hero and what's not very easily. But I hear you. I have 2 sets that I have there's 10 of these and 12 of these, and most of my monsters are those if they are like groups and I need to tell them apart. Because for the rest of them, I don't have that many. If you're fighting 7 orcs, you're gonna be this specific.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, are we?
Nope, you're good. No, you just
Okay,
froze a
good.
little bit. I don't know if you froze for everyone out there, but you froze a little bit for me. So
Oh, I'll freeze on purpose from now on. Oh, gummy bears also make fine minis for a table game. Yes.
yeah.
I've certainly played ones where everybody's got their, I'm the D4. Well, I'm the blue D6.
Mhm. Well,
Those games are great.
Sometimes you just like, I've spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on gaming stuff. You need a set of dice and scraps of paper. That's it. Like, I have played D&D where somebody has set out like, a couple of notebooks and drawn a map on the notebooks, and we ripped up pieces of paper and wrote like little signifiers of what the creatures are on those pieces of paper, and we moved those pieces of paper around, and that was it, right? In fact, I think I did that like 2 or 3 years ago doing a Shadowrun game because we needed to figure out positioning, and classically, Shadowrun, you don't do a lot with a map. It's a lot of theater of the mind. And so, we needed to figure positioning, so that's what we did. It was great.
Yep. Yeah. I really enjoy that. I like hand-scrawled maps and just like, drawing on, you're here right now, and then crossing it off. Now you're over here.
Yeah.
Those are fun. Those are fun games.
Yeah.
Yeah, all that stuff is not necessary, although it is very useful if you got it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's good to have a checklist of the items that you need to bring to the game. So, kind of getting more into the prep side of things. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to be running this game, and maybe it's not at my house. We'll just say I'm not running it at my house, and we'll say it's in person. Somebody's ideas would work for virtual tabletop too. But so what I would do is then I would say, okay, well, I'm going to need this book for X, Y, and Z. I'm going to make sure I have enough miniatures to cover whatever I need, or pawns or related. I'm going to make sure I have whatever maps I need. I'm going to make sure I have a blank map, just one, right? Blank flip map, whatever. That way, in case something comes up, I can draw it. I'll make sure I have my markers. Dice, of course. I think I mentioned dice, but always double check your dice. And table tents. Everybody's way of tracking initiative is garbage, unless you're using table tents. And I don't care how much you like that, the stupid magnetic board, or writing on a piece of paper, or little flags on a pole. Like, table tents are the best. And I will. That is the line that I will, or that's the hill I'll die on.
Yeah, it's good because it gives. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna preach for you, right? It gives all the other players a visual indication of exactly who's up next. Whereas I, with my magnetic board that I like because I can track all sorts of things, I have to constantly tell people, all right, so it's your turn and you're up next, and then everybody else is like, but when is it me?
Right? Yeah.
And I'm just like, shh, sit down.
In 4th edition, when you delayed and you had to rearrange initiative, so easy with table tents instead of moving the markers around. I did pick the markers because I know you used the markers. Or the magnets. So I was picking a little bit. But whatever system you use for initiative, I got the table tent thing from Teos, who was on here a few weeks ago, and
here's camp. Here's camp. It's just tons of
But in those things that you use every game, make sure you pack those. If you use a DM screen, bring your DM screen. If you use a laptop, make sure your laptop's charged up.
You use a DM screen,
do.
right? Okay. Okay, that's a different conversation.
Okay.
DM screen is very important because then you get to lie to everybody, and I think that all DMs should do that.
100%. No, I used a DM screen mostly because I really do use those stupid charts on the back of it. Like I am one of those. Nice. And then because I use table tents, I like putting my monsters on the table in front of me. But I also use my laptop sometimes too, or sometimes I need a bigger DM screen, so I have my laptop and then my DM screen, and then I can keep all my minis hidden as to what I'm actually going to play. I have this horrible habit of putting out big crazy monsters and just leaving them casually on the table for the players to show up and see. But all my real monsters are hidden behind my screen and stuff.
Oh, that's so mean. That's so great. I have been using it, and specifically when I set mine up, it's a declaration that, okay, whatever happens snack-wise out there, I need this table space. Yeah. Like, this is me. And I use a Blue Rose DM screen just because I like the pictures on the outside. Like, I can't use anything on the inside, but I will use Post-it notes if I need to. But it's just okay, I'm going to need to put like a laptop and my notes and all these things. And this is me. I'm claiming it. It's very helpful.
Let's see. And you know, yeah, and for else, let's see, what else for a home game? So we've spent a little time ahead of time creating a couple of different encounters, having a handful of different NPCs, maybe a couple of different locations so that we're ready there. And this is where I think these three secrets comes in. You know, whenever you kind of have that little bit of a story, you're creating for a home game, having the I think this is Sly Flourish, Sly Flourish 3 secrets. And and they three clues towards something. Oh man, I'm spacing. Anyway, the idea is you come up with three beats, and these 3 beats are the beats that you anticipate your characters to go through and lead you lead them through the story that you're helping craft with them. You know, and sometimes they don't hit all 3, and sometimes they need, you know, a little extra. But as long as you have those 3, that gives you a solid base to improvise and move forward on.
Yeah. I will tell you that the camp adventures that I'm doing, based on that model, right? I send them to a location. They arrive. They see in front of them a place. There are some people they can talk to, and where they're getting some of those clues. And they might send them to different locations. And I have basic ideas about what those locations are and the kind of complication that they can find there. But, you know, that's sentences tops. Yeah. And the combat that I want to have, that I've planned, I could have at any of those places. I could have when they get back. Yeah. Like, I could ambush them there. You know, it's I've gotten away from, you must go through this dungeon and do these things, because I just want them to choose. Like, I want them to decide what sounds fun. And giving them those options has been really fun for that. Yeah. Like, for that home game. It's just, well, those kids told me they wanted to go here. And those kids I really like. We got along. You know, I have a 2-sentence description for them, basically. But I'm able to interact with them, and they like that interaction, and they go over there. Or a merchant who has been helpful to some characters, has been a coward, like just hiding because they got slapped first thing. They've been greedy and malicious and like trying to sell terrible things. And it all just kind of depends on the interaction. Again, I have like 3 sentences written down for that and what they can offer and help out and point out in the world. And we've gotten so many different interactions out of it based on just who is there, that it's so good. It's so good. And all they're there to do is give you one of those 3 clues, right? One of those secrets to push you onwards towards the next thing. It's such a free-form way to do it, and I'm so happy with it right now. Like, this is such a good method.
I see Teos has joined the chat. We were talking about table tents earlier and how I stole that idea from him, and I know he stole it from other people. And Aubrey has kindly pointed out that I stole all my good ideas from him, and I would argue that isn't untrue.
You know, you see a good DM in action.
Exactly, right. I
steal things.
Two of the most influential DMs to me, like over time, have been Teos and my friend Jonathan, and they're both 2 very different styles of DMs, and their prep, I guarantee, is very different, right? Whenever I sit down at Teos's table, I expect a lot of a lot more ability to role play, a lot more interaction with NPCs, a lot more depth to the adventure and characters. And then when and not to say that that's not with Jonathan's game, right? In the same otherwise, right? I sit down to a Jonathan game and I expect a lot of tactics, a lot of, very interesting combats with levels to them, like layers and layers. And that's not to say that Teos doesn't do that, because he does, absolutely. And, stealing those kinds of ideas, it has helped me become a better DM. So whenever I'm prepping, a lot of times I think, okay, well, is there an opportunity to add depth to the game here? Is there an opportunity to explore this NPC a little bit more? Is there a space for the characters to roleplay here? On the other end, is this combat interesting? Does it do something interesting? Does this one need to be interesting? Do I need this this special combat at the end of this session, or is it unnecessary, right? So and that's going to be like a long-term prep kind of strategy for new DMs. Go play with other DMs, right? That's the power of organized play. That's the power of all this virtual tabletop, that type of stuff, is seeing the way other DMs and other players play, because it just gives you that much more fuel for your fire and that much more ability to improv at the table when that one player sees the rails and goes the complete other way.
I totally agree with you. I think organized play is instantly made me a better DM for sure. Like I can't think of anything else that gave me more tools and skills and things to look at. So, oh wow.
Yeah. Well, maybe let's touch on like so I think the nebulous prepping for home games is it's a little different, right? Because it's hard to really tie down like what you need to do there. But for a one shot or organized play, that's a little bit different, right?
Right.
Yeah. So in this case, you know what adventure you're running ahead of time. You have the adventure potentially, at least a couple hours before your session. Yeah.
Hopefully.
There's definitely been stories of, people rushing to the printer at cons to get their adventures together. And I mean, honestly, like you should be the adventures. You should be able to run them cold, right? They should be that well written. But in order to bring a very full experience of that adventure, you prep for it, and you prep a little bit differently than you would for a home game.
Yeah.
How about you? Where do you think your prep differs for a home game, or for not differs? What's your prep for organized play?
Well, excuse me. It's kind of similar to, right, like you were saying, a published adventure in the same sense. When I'm running those, I don't necessarily feel like it's not, the story isn't collaborative in the exact same way. Like, especially for Pathfinder, and that's most of my experience, you tell that story.
Right.
That's your job as the game master. Not to like introduce people and lead you astray and all these other, there are these characters that have already been written. I need to figure out what their motivations are, what they're doing, because I can't make that up as I go. I need to figure out all the rails. So mine is, almost in my head, playing the adventure solo, figuring out all the things. That's why I always say, like, okay, and I draw the maps so I can think about what the combat is, because the combat's in there. I need to make it interesting or no one's going to have any fun, and I can't just skip it. I have to do it. So what's the thing in here that is interesting? Where is it? What is the development going to look like? What are the skill challenges that they need to have? Like, I'm always going through and bolding all the things, like highlighting everything I need. And it takes effort. Yeah. Like, that's when I think about prepping a game that takes equally as long to play and run, I'm almost always thinking about organized play, because that's kind of how I looked at it. It was my, DMing is when I'm playing a home game, I'm also one of the players, right? We're all here. Our goal is to have fun. Our goal is to do all this stuff. As an organized play DM, my goal is different. It's not just I'm here to have fun. It's I'm here to give an experience to these other players. I need them to have fun, and I will be like satisfied. Like, that's what I want. The satisfaction of doing a job well. And that's not how I think about my home games as much. I mean, it's there, but there's more I want out of that interaction, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. And so for me, when I prep for organized play or that type of stuff, it's for a 4-hour session, it's 3 to 4 hours of prep. And that's a lot of prep. And but what I do is exactly like you say. I read the entire adventure from start to finish once. Then I read the entire adventure again, start to finish, with a highlighter, and kind of visualize what I expect the characters to do. And I highlight a bunch of stuff. I usually have a different color highlighter for dialogue. And then I will often underline different names so that I know who's speaking the dialogue, because a lot of times writers will say, the dialogue and then said blah blah blah, right? So you have to, right? If you're doing any kind of, even if you're not doing voices, but any kind of inflection on your voice, like you kind of need to do that. I'll sit there and I'll draw out all the maps. I'll grab all the minis. I will grab different minis for each adventure or each encounter, because of just a flow, because then I can just set them in their little pods behind my DM screen and just plop them out when they're ready to go. I usually try to get a little bit more accurate minis whenever I'm doing organized play, because like you said, providing that experience. So for I think organized play, it's like I don't think rules mastery is nearly as much of a necessity for organized play as it is for home games, right? I think you need to have better system mastery for a home game than you do for organized play. Because there's always going to be at least a couple people at that table who know the book inside and out, right? And I think that's a great way to learn. When I started playing 4th edition, I was playing in organized play, and I think I ended up starting to DM before I had a full grasp on how all the rules played out, and that built my system mastery, which made me a better player, which made me a better DM, all that stuff. So
Yeah.
but
This is really cool. I like Jonathan mentioned earlier in the chat, looking at Roll20, and one of the downsides is that like you have to be prepared in advance. Like it is meant for your home game, but in a sense, like it almost feels like organized play to me, in that you got to set everything up in advance. You got to have those tokens and those maps. You know, it's hard. I guess I don't know how to spin all the dials there in order to just like on the fly be like, okay, so we're fighting. Okay, you go to the ogre's den. All right, let's just put all that together. I don't know how easy that is. In a home game, it's super easy because I can just quickly do it. But anytime that you have to put in that prep to build your encounters and adventure, that's going to be significantly harder.
Yeah, and from playing a home game on virtual tabletop, I'm playing a published adventure, and it is a dungeon crawl.
Yeah.
So prepping is easy. I just prep the next level of the dungeon, like a week ahead of time, and I'm good, right?
Yeah.
So.
Oh, these are such good questions in the chat. Is there an RPG system that's easier or harder to prep for than the others? Fiasco? No. There's so many games that require no prep, right? But I'm trying to think of a D&D style game RPG that requires no prep, and that's hard.
Yeah, I think the best way, if you were to go for a low or easy prep, is to do a published adventure. I would say, honestly, like right now, Paizo published adventures are more linear than the way a lot of the DM's Guild stuff I've seen lately. In the linear fashion for them will mean that newer and more inexperienced people can prep these games without as much issue, right? And a lot more streamlined. Even if you're not playing it in an organized play setting, but if you're playing it like in a home game, the Paizo adventures straightforward. Very linear, and then there's like certain writers that you can dig into in a DM's Guild, like Sean Merwin, who writes amazing introduction adventures. Like those types are very easy to prep for. So I think the big two, D&D and Pathfinder, are going to be your easiest to prep for. When you get into Spycraft and Shadowrun, then things are going to get a little bit more complicated, because Spycraft, notoriously, like in organized play, like you could have an entire adventure that's just like 1 or 2 pages, right? Like that's the entire 4 hours. Maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration. I haven't run it. I've only played it. But then you get Shadowrun, where the entire mod is 16 pages, and that includes the cover page and the certs at the end. So you have like 10 pages of actual adventure. So that's a little bit more difficult, because and part of the way you play Shadowrun, part of the way you run Shadowrun, is being ready to improvise, because there's a lot of footwork that goes into it, and your players are going to come up with interesting ideas to try to prepare for the adventure, for the heist, as it were. So, I would say D&D, Pathfinder, Starfinder, another good one, easier to prep for. I'm gonna say Shadowrun's probably one of the harder ones. Is it harder to prep though? Well, I think it is. You have to be. No, I think it's easier to prep if you know the system. But if you don't know the system, there we go.
Yeah. I will say, if I haven't mentioned it yet, The Secrets of Skyhorn Lighthouse, have we already talked about this on the DM's Guild? It is an adventure. I've mentioned it to Jonathan a few times, I'm sure. An adventure that is meant to be run cold, because each page is the entirety of that scene. And
The Secrets of Skyhorn
it's very
Lighthouse?
good at Skyhorn Lighthouse. It was written in a very unique style, specifically so that like DMs could come into it and look and be like, all right, well, this page is going to tell us about this room, in this undersea grotto. Here's the shark that's going to be there. Here's the NPC. Here's the treasure I could find. And it's just page to page. Here's what happens next. Here's how I get here. Here's the stuff we could do. I want to write an adventure in that format. Like I enjoy it so much. That is really good.
See, Richard?
Aubrey's question's really good
yeah,
too.
no, let's get into it. Richard, what did your teachers in D&D camp, or what did? I'm sorry, I can't read it from here. Let me boost it up. What did you teach your D&D kids about prep?
So all these teachers, they were coming at it from an interesting point. Some of them know kids and know that they're going to be chaotic, and they're like, so how do I wrangle? How do I marshal myself to do all this? and the experience that they have with D&D is often older. So, someone who in second ed built a dungeon on graph paper, moving through it. And one was the parent specifically who was doing this, and then tried to start running that for their kids, like a similar format, like a 5-room dungeon, kind of classic dungeon model. And realized after the first encounter, like after the entryway, that these kids are not interested in a dungeon and they don't want to do it. So they're not, the whole rest of that was just kind of wasted. He was like, well, I spent a lot of time on that. How can I fix that? We talked about montage style, doing some combats, like, fighting a group of 5 goblins doesn't need to be an hour long. It can be like you fight a group of 5 goblins. What does your character do during that combat? That's awesome. And, just doing quick montages, like maybe reduce some resources if you want to do the resource drain part of the game. And moving towards more interesting things, like we talked about doing physical challenges, which I know I've talked about here before, but things in the world to kind of represent doing stuff in game to kind of keep these things interesting. And for the teacher, I recommended that too, because they're going to have a huge chaotic group that knows each other well, is going to know the game, I assume. Well, it was a good camp, so maybe they'll know it equally, but, I know when I was a kid, I dived into the book and knew everything about it as fast as I could. So the conversation was all about like how much prep do you do? How much should you write when chaos is happening? Like kids will bring chaos to this. And I talked a lot about reskinning, talked about have these interesting moments, and no matter what they do, make sure you can still slot them in so that you haven't wasted time making interesting moments. It was the lazy approach. It absolutely is. Like, no matter where you go around here, you're going to end up finding this trap, and behind it is this MacGuffin that you need to find, right? And as long as you can do that, it's just such a good way to run it, I think, and good for kids in particular. So that's kind of my big push right now, is keeping people away from running, Horde of the Dragon Queen. That's just the one on my shelf. For kids versus doing these things that can be more freeform and that you can plug and play the moments, rather than like, all right, well, they decided they didn't want to go with the caravan, and so I don't know what to do with the entire rest of this book now.
Oh man. Yeah. Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
No, I'm looking at the time. I'm like, all right, well, we did start a couple minutes late and we've gone a couple minutes over. So let's do this.
I've got 3 links too. So hold on. Okay, go.
Oh, you have 3 links.
I just want to mention 3 things real fast. I just have them written down.
Well, cool. For first, I'm going to ask you the 3 tools in your toolbox that allow you to prep and DM more efficiently. If the listeners and the followers and the viewers needed to develop 3 tools to help them get going, what do you think they would be?
Okay. Wow. Oh my gosh. Full system mastery. No, that's not true. The ability to improvise, to say yes. Holy cow. Yes. My game is saved when I can say yes to a player's weird request. There is no store that needs to have an inventory. Like, just say yes to the thing they're looking for. Like, it's so much easier. Have cool things as well, but just say yes to stuff. Let them do all the things they want to do. Make them roll if it's difficult, but saying no just is unnecessary sometimes. So I find that to be a huge boon. I don't collect a whole lot of miniatures, but I have a box full of like player-focused miniatures so that I can look through that. And as a DM, I can be like, this person like this. I also have a deck of face cards that Pathfinder put out that is exactly that as well. Just be like, the NPC is this one. Here we go. This is Jeff, the baker. Great. That is super useful. I use that all the time. 3. Yeah. Gosh. Map book, nah. What's a good third one? I'm going to say the third one is actually the Dungeon Master's Guide, a book that I feel like no one reads. Yeah. It's a book that you open and reference when you need a table, but the introduction to that book has a thing about knowing your players, and if I've never mentioned it before, it is the golden part of that entire book. It's so good. Yeah,
the Dungeon Master Guide. Yeah, and I'm not going to disagree with any of those because those are all great. And I think the Dungeon Master Guide is great across the editions too, right? It's nice to sometimes pop back into my 2nd edition Dungeon Master's Guide and read through it and pull some information from there. I think the 4th edition's Dungeon Master Guide and DMG2 were some of the best of the Dungeon Master guides.
Yeah.
I didn't really. I don't reference the 3.5 one as much because I just didn't really DM 3.5. So, but I have it if I ever need it. Yeah. So, yeah, Dungeon Master Guide. I think that's a good one. I'm gonna say I agree with saying yes. I think that's good, and I think improving is good. And I think I'm gonna add this little bit to improving, and that is reskinning. This is something we've talked about a lot.
Yep.
Like the stats of monsters are not as important as the experience. And so like if you have a bunch of goblins and they have ogre stats, fine, it's going to create a very different story, different experience, and it's going to throw your players off a little, and it's going to be fun. So
yeah, that's really, really good.
You have 3 links, 3 shoutouts.
I do. I have 3 quick shoutouts. These are for ways to make your campaign a little bit faster, a little bit quicker. Recently, there was an app online called Dungeon Scrawl. You can find it at dungeonscrawl.com, I believe. And it is absolutely a mouse-driven dungeon designer that will create dungeons in the style that that Dyson Logos, among others, use. It's the one in all the books right now. Very thick walls made out of like hash marks everywhere. It's so good, and it is so easy, and you can make a dungeon in minutes.
Nice.
Just minutes. It's got a lot of like, I want a room that's rectangular, and I want this path going this way, and it draws it all out for you. And for folks who are interested in publishing, it's all under Creative Commons licenses where you can download it and use it for free. No problem. You just like maybe write Dungeon Scrawl. You don't even have to, but they would like it. For character building, Hero Forge is so good. I've been using it with all my kids, and they love it. Just the ability to visualize their character and say, this is what I look like, is so powerful. Yeah. It's empowering for them. Really, really good. But for DMs, 2-minute tabletop tokens is a site that has a bunch of just images of monsters and characters and things on it. And you can go through and like change very quickly the colors of the eyes and the clothing and stuff like that. And it's one of my parents actually showed it to me recently. And I was like, whoa, that is super quick, super fast. Highly recommended. Takes about 2 minutes to build a token.
Awesome. Cool. And then upcoming this week, where can we see you?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think you can see me in Alexandria as the Sirens play a couple matches of Ludomancy. That's what the game is called. Okay, so if you go to Egypt, there we go. Actually, I think it's going to be kind of head down, I think, this week. I need to be writing some things, publishing some things pretty quickly. But my big announcement is going to be about the store for the after-school program, which is going live later today. Oh, wow. So all Kickstarter backers will get an email about that. And we'll see how many folks sign up for the first season, which is going to be the season of the Cartographer.
Oh, nice.
We'll be showing up at the Academy with a strange map, and we'll see where that adventure takes our players.
That's awesome.
For 5 weeks of fun.
That's right. You heard it here first. Owlbear Soup exclusive.
Oh, yeah. Woo! That's perfect.
Let's see. This week I will be DJing on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday on twitch.tv/DJ or Dread Pirate Rabbits. Sorry. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and all those places at 2HitAC0. And of course, we do have the shared Owlbear Soup Atomic Game Theory Dread Pirate Rabbits Discord server. The link is in the chat, and or you can just go to soup.fyi/discord, and it'll send you there. Yeah. And then that's where we will be looking for suggestions for topics for next week's sweet Owlbear Soup.
Yes. Yes. Otherwise, it'll be me on Dungeon Scrawl, just like drawing.
Right.
Just drawing.
Soup.
That's amazing. I am excited to hear more about your campaign, especially your Roll20 experiences.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. If I can throw in a little plug, holy cow. I forgot about one of the DM's tools that I may not be able to go back on, and that's D&D Beyond.
Oh, yeah. D&D Beyond.
I am in at this point, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to go back to paper and books.
Yeah, no, I love D&D Beyond so much.
I've turned a corner.
Yeah, maybe one of these days we'll talk about the transition from a physical world to a digital world.
Darn right.
All right. Well, everyone, thanks so much for joining us. And, I think that was some good soup.